Good day, leaders. Welcome to the Elephant Room, where today we're going to be speaking about how to empower your parents and also how to empower your volunteer leaders as we navigate the waters moving forward and transitioning back into our churches and beyond over this next season. And so we know we're sheltered in place, and we realize we're at that pivotal point where we are now into the last, 5 weeks where we have developed our own patterns and structure. But how do we develop our leaders to help pass the mantle forward? Today I have a panel of highly influential and high capacity leaders across our fellowship, across the nation. And so we're going to discuss this topic, and we hope that you are blessed, and we hope that you are empowered from this conversation.
Hi, I'm Joey Silva. I'm out of Chicago. I've been in youth ministry now full-time for the last 11 years, and I get the honor of traveling and speaking in various places, camps, retreats, things like that, and it's an honor to be on this call.
Hey, what's up, y'all? My name's Curvine, Brewington. I am a student pastor at Crossroads Church in Lafayette, Louisiana. Getting chubby down here, good food. But I've spent the past 14 years on the road full-time as a hip-hop artist and evangelist. And we've been planted here in southern Louisiana for the past 5 years. Loving the season. And it is an honor to be here.
My name is Peter Reeves. I am the Next Gen pastor at Mount Hope Church in Lansing, Michigan. And I've been in Michigan for 5 years, originally from Pennsylvania, and still learning student ministry and now kids ministry. So I'm in the world. I'm fully immersed in the ministry world. Glad to be on this call.
And I'm Char, Blair. I'm director of church ministries here in Northern California, Nevada, Assemblies of God. I have been at our district office for 21 years. And about 2 years ago, I became the director of church ministries. So I get to oversee student ministries, kid-min ministries, all sorts of great ministries, except for women's ministries, even though they're still great.
I think in particular for us, one of the biggest shifts we're seeing in youth ministry is you don't have the built-in engagement anymore, where a lot of our adult leaders can just come to youth group once a week. Kids would show up, you'd have your interactions before, during, and after service, and then they could go home. And so you can almost chalk it off as, hey, I had my one a week interaction, I caught up with this kid. And now we don't have that. Now there has to be intentionality about reaching out to the kid. Now I think they're starting to understand how good or how bad they were doing as leaders versus, I haven't heard from this kid in a week or two. Well, that kid hasn't heard from you either. And it's this moment now where they got to get out of their comfort zones, even though they're quarantined. There's these kids, it's not new for them because most of them have been quarantined. When I was a kid, I spent all day long outside. These kids always spend all day long inside. And so social media, video gaming, all that stuff, this is not a new reality for them. And so making sure that our leaders are intentional about meeting the kids where they're at, whether that's they can TikTok videos, going on a Zoom call with them, getting Insta message, Insta live. And then even from a pastoral perspective or a main leader perspective, adjusting your services. I personally cannot stand putting myself on camera. I'm not a kind of guy that likes to be that kind of attention and that kind of scrutiny. But I'm forcing myself now to do Instagram lives and to do social interactions and put myself online where it's the new reality. This is what we have to do now in order to reach the kids. And the benefit of that I'm seeing is that we're reaching more kids now, kids that normally wouldn't come, who were too shy or embarrassed to go to a building, but don't mind just clicking on something and checking it out for a few minutes. And so we've seen a lot more engagement from kids who never came to our youth group, just friends of students who are logging on, who are checking it out, who are following us now. And so I really think it's a blessing in disguise, and it's allowed leadership to not be lazy anymore and to have to be intentional again about going out and making one-on-one connections.
I would also, I agree with you completely, man. The high touch, man, is so important. And I would say even with the high touch, an important way to engage our adult leaders, I'm discovering is giving them ownership. So for an example, one thing we're doing tomorrow, we actually are Zooming with all of our adult leaders, and we've divvied up all the contact information for our students. And hey, we're giving each adult leader, 5 students to reach out to phone, send a call to check in on. And when we put that in their hands, they were so blown away by that. They felt so like empowered. They felt, man, I'm still a part of this thing. I'm still necessary. And so, I think that giving them that ownership, man, goes a long way in their involvement and connectivity to the students.
This is one of my favorite things to talk about. I obsess a little bit over reaching out to leaders and to parents, and I'll start with the parent side as well. And actually, considering both of them, the thing I think that's most important is collaboration. That's kind of the word that we've been throwing around, is collaboration, allowing parents to collaborate and allowing our leaders to collaborate. And what we do, honestly, is we try to create just safe spaces for people to share their opinions. So really on both sides, on the parent side and on the leader side, we're asking them, hey, what do you think we should be doing? What do you think we could be doing? Because if it's up to me or our team to come up with all the ideas that are going to engage all the parents and the leaders in our student ministry and in our city, we're not going to put them together. So as far as the parent side goes, we're back on the wave of Facebook. We have rediscovered the superpower of Facebook, because even though we dogged it for so long because our kids aren't on there, that's where all their parents are. And so we started asking parents, engaging, because in this time, right, when you're engaging people, you can't just kind of connect with them one way. You got to do it a couple different ways, even if the medium is just one way. So what I mean by that is, when we talk to parents, we're not just trying to talk to their head or to their heart or to their hands. We're trying to talk to all three: their head, their heart, their hands. What are we asking them to think about? What are we asking them to pray about? What are we asking them to do, right? And we allow a bunch of different parents on a Facebook group to collaborate and to share thoughts. And it's so interesting. We've actually seen, just like Joey, students that we've never been able to reach start to come to our student ministry, because just like sharing, when they find a great study, guide, or they find something awesome for their kid, parents are willing to share that with other parents. And so they have been our biggest influencers as far as getting students to tune online to our different mediums. And so that has been super cool. And then on the leadership side, I would say, again, collaboration, asking our leaders, hey, what do you think we should be doing? And then commissioning them or empowering them to be able to do those things, right? So like one of our leaders, she actually killed 2 birds with 1 stone for me. We just posted in our small group chat, hey, who's passionate about student ministry? And out of our leaders, she's the only one that responded. And so I reached out to her, and she started to create this phenomenal content for parents that I could never just find on, or download from some youth ministry site. Like, she came up with it, and she put her touch on it. She was super specific, and it helped us, number one, attach her to the ministry like you're talking about, or Curvine attached her to the ministry, but then also it really reached our parents, and they were super responsive to the content that she put out. I think collaboration is key. And then lastly, I'll share this. When it comes to my leaders, I don't just want them to be involved. I want them to share their thoughts and to create conversation. And so that's what our biggest go-to in this season is. We want to create conversation. And what I mean by that is, when a post is made in any kind of forum, or on, whether it's to our student ministry or our Instagram, like, we could post something, but we don't want to just post it and have people like it. We want to create conversation. So if I posted something today and Char liked it, I would comment on there and say, hey, what, I just realized my tongue is blue because I had a blue slushie. I exposed myself, but I couldn't say no to the Dunkin' Donuts. But if she commented on my post, I would say, hey, at Char, why did you like this? Or what are your thoughts behind this? And now we're creating this thread where everyone's opinion is valuable, because the best leaders make people feel safe. They make people feel valuable. And so that's kind of been one of our key strategies to get people connected. And it works as well, even behind the scenes with our leaders. We're posting different verses and saying, hey, you hearted that. Why did you heart that? Why is that significant? Tell me where that applies to your life, or what you could see, or who this. And then I might even ask a question like, what would you say to the student that says, hey, I heard everything you said, but I'm fearful, right? And then I want to get those responses from leaders as well too. So those are some of my thoughts.
I think for me, I have a very different context, although I'm definitely working with a lot of volunteers and a lot of leaders. And so I want to make sure that I'm stewarding and pastoring this season well with them. And so for me right now, it's just making it all about them. My connections right now are all about them, not so much about, what I got going on, or what this, what our next season is even going to look like. I've got people calling me about, are we still going to have camp? Are we going to do this? and turning it around and giving them the best answers I can right now, but making it really about like, what can we do for you? So my whole role is making sure that I'm staying consistent, I'm staying transparent, and I'm staying predictable. So I'm not putting more things on them during this season because it's a heavy season already, more things on them than necessary. Usually I meet with my DYDs once a month, and I have stepped up the communication only because I want to make it a time of connection where they're actually just able to connect and learn from each other during this season. And so I'm really just trying to offer a pastoral stance of saying, okay, hey, this is what I want to offer. I want to offer you guys a platform. The other thing I've been doing that's really big is sending out care packages. So we just sent out to all of our youth pastors in our district a T-shirt that just says "Essential, made for this moment." They'll be getting that on Wednesday. Found out that one of our youth pastors has COVID. Sent him this huge big old box of stuff that he can do while he's sick. Put together Bob Ross painting a puzzle thing that we sent him, and all these snacks and goodies. Just trying to definitely be pastoral in this season, but yet prepare for the future and provide them opportunities. So my whole thing is just making sure I want to stay transparent and I want to stay consistent, because with all of the uncertainty, I want to let them know that I'm predictable. So that's kind of where I'm at on this scale of this thing right now, where we are.
One of the things that I'm trying to do, especially with our leaders, is communicate long-term. And by that, I mean, one thing I heard from Craig Rochelle's podcast is he's planning through August. And God willing, we start to see a little bit back of normalcy come mid-May, somewhere around that area. But I would rather have it extended. We normally plan out 4 months in advance, and that gives the leaders an opportunity to adjust, to plan, to figure things out. And so I'm planning through August. I'm letting them know, if this doesn't change, here's what our new normal is going to look like. Because even if things start to adjust back in May, I don't think for many places, particularly with us in Chicago, we got hit pretty hard. It's not going to, I think, be okay, everything can go back to normal starting today. It's going to be a slow rollback. And so they may limit the amount of people that can gather together in the church. We may feel like, hey, you can get back together, but only in groups of 10 or less, or 50 or less, or 100 or less. So we might have to adjust and go to 2 youth group nights and maybe break up where we normally, in my group, we have senior high and junior high together. If we have to limit the numbers, then we might have to do back-to-back nights. We might have to continue to do Zoom calls in our small groups because we can't accommodate all our small groups on the one night. So there's still some adjustments that I'm trying to communicate to them so that, if everything goes back to normal mid-May, then that's a pleasant surprise. But if it doesn't, and I communicated that it should, now they're disappointed. And now they have to readjust and reprioritize their mind. So I'm looking at more like, hey, this might go on the rest of the year, guys, but this is what we're doing now until further notice. And one of the great feedbacks I got from one of my leaders when we were talking about it is he said, hey, can we keep doing some of these things that we've been doing when we go back to normal? And my response was, I already thought that. Absolutely. I think it's imperative that we don't go back to how we were, but we continue to bring some of these things on. So we were doing, like last week, we did an interview with our missionary because we were supposed to have a missionary in. And I've been doing every other week live interviews with just pastor friends of mine, because I remember how much I loved hearing my mentors and my ministers talking to their friends and kind of being a fly on the wall. So there's these little things that are being developed out of necessity right now that I think are going to be part of the new normal, even when we get back to what used to be a reality of meeting together on a regular basis.
I think that the community is just so powerful right now. I heard someone say this, and I love it, because right now we're in the phase of presence is triumphing over performance. And so before, we've been in this performance phase of look what I can do, and there's conferences, and look at our lights, look at the smoke, blah, 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 smoke and mirrors. And now it's all about the most important person to me right now is the person on the other end of the Zoom chat. Mm-hmm. And I even said to my leaders, I said, well, who do we want to have? I was thinking big name, as in the DYD position, you're always thinking, who's the best person that you can get, the biggest, brightest, And one of my regional DYDs, he goes, well, Char, he goes, I just love getting on here and talking between us. and almost like this family coming together and saying, man, these are the, when you bring in, because right now big names are trying to get on Zooms. They're hurting too. So they've come down in price and they're accessible, right? And but when you do that, you don't leave room for community to take place, because now you've just called in an expert. And so the minute you call in an expert, you just take the little guy over in Podunk Nowhere, and he just becomes the non-expert, the non-guru sitting there watching, and they want to be able to interact. And so my whole role is lifting up that person to become, hey, look at what so-and-so is doing, making them the expert, making them the guru. And I think right now in this season specifically, that is just so important, because we're going to be we're looking for we're looking for Jesse's sons, going back to Samuel picking out a king. We're looking for the tall buff dude, and God always uses the little guy over here, minding the sheep, so to speak. So that's just, where I'm kind of at right now in my leadership.
I really like the thoughts that you guys have been presenting. Kind of like this whole thing is not just like an on and off switch. Like we're quarantined, we're going to be good. It's more like ice melting, right? Like it's going to melt slowly. And in this time, I really want to take advantage of the time that we have. And so back to the leadership development thought, I want to be really practical, and I'm creating, like, I love that you said the Craig Rochelle Leadership Podcast. Listen to it as much as I can. I want to create a YouTube playlist that my leaders can go to. And now it's not just, they're not just hearing my stuff like when I'm talking to them on a Zoom call, which is so pivotal, as we've went over it multiple times. But now I put together a playlist that has some of my favorite leaders who are giving, short talks. And maybe I even cut those talks and say, listen to this time, up to this time, 4 minutes in. That's all you need. Listen to this right here, 25 minutes in. So YouTube playlists have been huge for me. But for every leader we develop, I got this from Church Fuel. It's a website that gives out free resources to ministry leaders, a personal growth plan. And so in this season, I've gotten on a call with every single one of my leaders, me and my assistant youth pastor and a few others of our team, our staff, and just gone through with every leader and started to create a personal growth plan for them, because we have the time. Like, we're here. So like some leader, it might be like, hey, I just need to start listening to these podcasts weekly. And I'm going to send the notes into you or whoever is above me, the leader taking care of me. Or for someone else, it might be, I need to read these 4 books, right? We're just trying to get everyone on some path, and we want them to pick the result. I might say to them, hey, how could you add the most value to our team? Where do you need to grow? What's standing in the way of you becoming a better leader? And once they identify that for me, I can now hold them to a standard that they picked for themselves, not that I picked for them. And so that really helps a lot. We've been focusing on doing that quite a bit. And so that's kind of been our big go-to. And then using leaders to do things that they're passionate about. Like, we have a pre-service meeting every week. We have multiple leaders running that pre-service meeting. We have an after party at the end of every Instagram Live, Facebook Live, a leader overseeing that. Different, I've seen different youth ministries get extremely creative with the kind of things that they're doing online, right? Releasing those things. I'm like, I have a leader doing a cooking show on Friday. I don't know, just weird stuff like that. But just empowering people to do stuff, all the things that you guys are saying. So,
for me, it's always been, from the beginning of my ministry, my primary goal was leadership. And I just look first and foremost, the first thing Jesus does is he recruits his leadership team. Before he starts doing everything else, he gets his people. He starts grabbing people. And I think of Jethro's advice to Moses, go and get help. Like, you're foolish if you think you can do this all on your own. And I think this pause has kind of brought that to reality for some people that haven't established teams yet, on the importance of teams. So on a practical sense, I would just start off maybe by doing a weekly Bible study. And I just start grabbing 2 or 3 people that are like-minded, that are willing to say, hey, would you mind? I'm just, we're all kind of stuck at home. Tuesday night, I want to put together a little Bible theme. Would you mind jumping in on that Zoom call? Make it unassuming. I got tricked into leadership. I wanted to help out. I wanted to volunteer because I love the kids, but I was bitter about past experiences I had with leadership, and I didn't like the title. And so I remember telling my former pastor, hey, I'll help out as long as you don't call me a leader. And he was like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Knowing in full advance that once he gets me in, I'm going to fall in love with these kids. And so for me, I think it's just inviting them to the party, letting them be a part of just your heart and hearing your heart. and slowly incorporating that. And again, there are other people that maybe you can straight away say the vision. I think a problem sometimes we have as leaders is we look at volunteers and we think they're not at our level. And so because of that, they're not going to be good enough. They're not going to be good leaders. And I've always stuck with the philosophy of I work with fat leaders, faithful, accountable, and teachable. If that's all they are, I don't need them to be experts in the Bible. I don't need them to be saved for 15 years. If they are faithful, if they're accountable, and they're teachable, then everything else I can show them how to do it. If they're willing to show up on time, if they're willing to have their own personal devotional life with God, if they are open to correction and to learning, then I can show everything else. I think for us, we need to stop looking for people that are as good as us as if we were this good when we started out, and start to understand that whoever God brings into our lives, it might be Peter, or it might be Judas. They're all on the team though. And we still need to make a way and make an opportunity. And again, take the challenge of development. I think that's the part where we're looking for ready-made when God has given us clay. And we need to be willing to develop leadership. And some of this is going to take longer than the quarantine time. But I believe now that we're kind of having that time, we have the opportunity to just focus in on maybe 4 or 5 people, or however many you could start out with. And listen, once you really get even just one, that one can start doing 2 or 3 disciples himself. And slowly your team will multiply. And so when I started out, we didn't have that large of a team, but there was a direct correlation between the size of my team and the size of my ministry. And I always put it as, if I have a 12-ounce bottle, I can never carry 16 ounces in it. The students are the liquid, the leadership is the bottle. If I want to contain 16 ounces worth of liquid, I got to get a bigger bottle. And so I'm always focusing on enlarging my bottle and making sure that the capacity of my leadership is based on them. Because truth is, right now, I don't have time to hit up every single one of my students. I don't have time to play video games every night. I have a newborn baby. She's 4 months old. We're not getting any sleep. I need these leaders. And truth be told, I'm getting older. I'm not as cool. They don't think I'm as cool. They look at me more as a dad at this point. Whereas my 21-year-old leader, who's wearing his ripped jeans and tight clothes and looking cool, they love him. They love her. And so they'd rather connect with that person. And they bring a level of understanding for me that I didn't remember anymore, because, I was still alive to watch the Bulls dynasty. They weren't alive to watch Kobe's dynasty. And so these are one of those things where incorporating the diversity of leaders, young, old, all different. We have grandmas, we have, 19-year-olds. We just have a diverse mix of it. And because of that, we get a diverse kind of student.
Yeah, the conversation, and really Joey just touched on it, man, so eloquently and brilliantly. But, Habakkuk 2:2 talks about, us writing down the vision, making it plain on tablets so that he who sees it will run with it. And so the reality is that, all of us are just in this completely unprecedented, situation. And the reality is that there are people, speaking to the pastor who may not have a huge leadership team, there are still people in your church that are literally just waiting on an opportunity, to be called upon. People want to feel valued and feel like they're necessary and needed. And so, I would say to the pastor watching this, to just step out and just make that phone call and just make the need known, put the vision before them. And another thing that I would do is that, obviously we're doing church differently than we've ever done it before. But there's still some systems and ways of doing ministry that are still applicable to doing church online, doing church as we are now. It's all about, what's the term? It's all about transposing it. So in other words, in our student ministry, as well as I'm sure, in all of your churches, I would imagine, we have at our church what we call shallow end areas of serving, where someone comes in, they just got saved last week, you're not going to have them leading a small group, but they can open a door, they can be a greeter, they can do the shallow end of the pool, serving opportunities. So for us, we sat back and we said, okay, so how can we replicate that same idea on a digital format? And so what one of the things we started doing is we use Craig Rochelle's church online platform for our live services. If you have never looked into it, I promise you, I don't know of anything else better out there. It has been a game changer for us. But even in using that platform, what we've done is there have been a few new folks that we've pulled in to help serve, and we've taken, and they're nervous. They don't know what to do, where to fit in. So we put them as hosts for our online services, and they're able to engage with the rest of our leaders. Our leaders know, the other hosts, they know, hey, they're new to the team, engage them, pull them in. And it's a game changer for them. It's a shallow end of the pool. All they're doing is saying hello to students as they come in, and they're just chatting with students. It's very exciting. And so if we could come up with more ways to create shallow end opportunities just to get their feet wet, I believe it could open the door. I mean, you guys know how it is, when you recruit leaders, man. Once they get their feet wet, man, they see, man, that this is life-giving, this is fun, I enjoy this, then, they're all in. So that's one thing we're focusing on for sure.
I think for me, taking it back to when I was youth pastoring, I was in a small little town. I was single, still am, and blessed with the gift of singleness. And so for me, I had to look at my deficiencies in the areas that I wasn't going to be able to provide for my students, and I had to recruit in those areas, and I had to go out and make relationships in those areas. So I had to make sure that I had parents on board because I wasn't a parent, and I had to be able to ask moms to come in and be the mom of the group. And so that means that I have to take and get rid of my insecurities, because I have to realize what I'm not, so that I can make this a well-rounded family, so to speak. I wanted to make sure that there was a well-rounded area for a well-rounded leadership team. And so, especially in regards to guys. So it was funny because most of the young people I attracted were junior high boys. For some reason, we just had a blast. I'd always said if I was going to be a mom, I wanted a whole team of boys. And so God blessed me with that when I was doing youth ministry. And so I had a whole bunch of young men who I just still love them to this day. And but I had to bring guys on the team because there was just things even young guys would come to me with because they felt comfortable talking to me, but I would still have to refer them to the other guy and be like, well, maybe we should talk to so-and-so about this, And so I had to look at what I was not. And then I think as a leader, now I'm in a position where I'm still in this place where I have to say God has gifted me with, before in my last position, it was all about what I did well. And people would call me. I did a lot of administration. So people would call me and be like, hey, man, can you talk to my administrator and teach him how to run this and do this? And so, but now in the current ministry position I'm in, I'm realizing that the biggest thing of what I bring to the table is what I don't know, because it makes me rely on people. So I don't want to go into the room as the smartest person in the room. I want to be able to get leaders on my team who have a higher capacity for leadership than I do. I want to make sure that at my table, there are such amazing leaders at my table that I'm like, whoa, because, and I can do that by looking at the areas that need to be shored up, where I need help. And so I have to be really honest about my blind side. And the larger the team you lead, the more blind sides you're going to have. And so if you're in a little bitty car, you can turn on a dime, you can make decisions, nobody's really going to care that much. But when you're driving a big rig, you have a lot of blind spots. So you need a larger team around you helping you to see. And so finding that trustworthy individual who's helping you with your blind spot and being able to be vulnerable and say, you know what, guys, I have no clue in this area. Let's go ahead. I'm going to throw it out on the table. One of the things I do too is I'll put together a plan. And I love this. I'd heard that the Navy SEALs do this. They never fall in love with their plan because they know that it can get destroyed in a moment's notice. We all have a plan. Mike Tyson says we all have a plan until we get punched in the face, right? And I feel like that's what Corona has done to us. It's kind of, we all had a plan of what it was going to look like until Corona, took us out, right? And knocks us out. And so I love to put a plan together with my team and then throw it on the table and say, let's take it apart. Let's tear it apart. And as much as I can say it's a vision from God, if it's not going to work, it's not workable. So being able to make sure that I'm going and putting people on my team and recruiting people, asking people, being vulnerable, saying, hey, I have no clue in what I'm doing. I need you to help me because I'm not a parent. I need you to help me because I'm not a dude. I need you to help me. And so I think people, when they feel that they're going to be valued on the team and that they're going to have a voice on the team, say, oh, well, yeah, I can do that. I can bring who I am to the table.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier. Craig Rochell's leadership podcast. He basically took a pause on the content that he was going to do and has been focusing on how to lead during COVID-19 and this whole situation that's going on. So that, and he adds a bunch of resources on this podcast as well.
I just want to throw out Gene Roncone, the superintendent for the Rocky Mountain District, just came out with a 10-page manual that him and his team put together on phasing back in to the new normal. And you can actually get that manual at generoncone.org/new normal. It's Gene Roncone, GeneRoncone.org/new normal. And he talks about pretty much everything in there, even being able to offer grief counseling to your people and all those kinds of things. So it's a great resource, highly recommended.
Yeah, I would say Church Fuel. Church Fuel is a great resource that they put out a bunch of different shareable resources and things that you can fill out, from daily rhythms to just personal growth plans and things like that, reading lists and things like that. So I think it's really helpful for in any kind of leader in any kind of situation, no matter what your context is. They have something for you, churchfuel.com.
Awesome. One resource I would strongly recommend, there's a book, it's a few years old, by Pete Scazzaro, titled The Emotionally Healthy Leader. Dude. So I've been going through that book. My wife and I and our core team as well, we meet through a Zoom chat every Thursday and go over the chapter. I've been on his stuff for about a year now. His podcast is incredible. The podcast is called The Emotionally Healthy Leader. That's the podcast. I'm sorry, the book is called The Emotionally Healthy
Emotional healthy spirituality.
Spirituality. Correct. Both great material. In fact, on his website, I know last week he was offering his discipleship kits for free. And so I've heard that they're not free anymore. I'm not sure. I would definitely go check it out. But that is a huge resource. I find that in this season, people are discovering a lot of leaders. Like you said, we've been so busy. I think now that with everything stripped away, a lot of folks are realizing that a lot of their worth was in their work, and being home with the family. I'm sure there's some leaders realizing I don't even like my wife anymore, or you know what I'm saying, or like, I don't, I mean, it kind of brings us back to who we really are, and it brings a lot of our dysfunction to the top. And man, what better time than right now to address that head on, man, and to get spiritually and emotionally healthy. So that would be a huge recommendation on my end.
And so we could probably do one more call with how to maintain a group, how to maintain leadership, but that's a whole nother conversation. But just know this, is that we are called to develop people, and people are messy, and we are messy, and we don't have it figured out. There's not a course on surviving pandemic in any Bible college that I know of. And so with all honesty, I think we can say, hey, we don't know everything, but we're committed to discipling your kids, or our kids if it's in your church and not a parent. And I think you'll find that momentum snowball will build. And come August, if we're intentional about not doing this alone, that we will discover just who God has with us, and we will become more healthy, and we'll become stronger because of it. It doesn't matter if you're in a church of 700, or a district of 7,000 or whatever it may be, and it doesn't matter your capacity. The principles are the same. Last thought is for you, is what I've been telling every week, because I believe this is of the Lord, is that if God wanted someone else to lead where you are, you wouldn't be leading, and there would be someone else here. So be confident in your call. We can all grow in our qualifications. We can all grow in our learning, but don't let the devil knock you out because you're getting insecure in who you are. Be the leader that God's called you, and we're going to get this together stronger and healthier for it. Thank you, leaders, for joining me in this call and investing in our leaders here in Louisiana and across our nation. And we're praying a blessing for you as well. Guys, you have a great week. God bless.
Thank you.